Hello and welcome, everybody. I am Cristina Garcia, an artificial intelligence professor at the Federal University of the State of Rio de Janeiro. Marisa Ferro and I, here in the studio, are chairing the 2022 IBERAMIA conference. Just a reminder, the IBERAMIA will be held in Cartagena de Indias, Colombia, next November. The deadline will be the deadline for paper submission is May 29. Don't miss it. Thank you for taking the time to join us today in our second special seminar as part of the pre-events for the 2022 IBERAMIA conference. It is a great pleasure for me to introduce our guest speakers, but I think that may be just one speaker today that will talk about artificial intelligence for the climate, for dealing with the issues of climate change. Let me give you a brief introduction of our speakers. Nayat is since 2018 the director of Inria, Chile Research Center. She will be our next keynote speaker at IBERAMIA. Today, she accepted to give us like a sample talk. I hope she will appear with Luis. Luis Martí is the scientific director of the Inria, Chile, and Nayat and Luis have a very similar stories, so I'm going to tell both in one. So Nayat and Luis have both a master's and a PhD degree in computer science from the Universidade Carlos III de Madrid, and a bachelor's degree also in computer science from the Universidade de La Habana in Cuba. Nayat and Luis worked as professors in Brazilian universities, also as researchers in AI labs and visiting scholars in European research centers. Nayat worked as a professor in the Rio de Janeiro State University, and Luis worked as a professor at the Fluminense Federal University. Without further ado, let me welcome Luis. The floor is yours. Better. The screen is yours. Welcome.
Well, thank you very much, Cristina, for the introduction. And well, thank you, Marisa and Cristina, for inviting me to this presentation. Well, inviting us. I have to start let's say, share with you that Nayat was not able to be with us at the today, had the last minute urgency to take care. So I hope to be able to represent the part she was going to share with you correctly. No, let's see how it ends. So how do I present this? The slide. Okay, awesome, very good, very sophisticated. So, well, again, thank you for the invitation. That for us was very good, very nice opportunity to share with you part of the work we have been doing in this area. Hello, Eduardo. And in particular, the work we have been doing, as Cristina mentioned, in the overlap between artificial intelligence, mathematical modeling, and the application of these methods for understanding oceans and climate change. So let's start, as not everybody in the audience might be familiar with Inria. Inria is the French National Institute for Research in Computer Science. It's computer science, applied mathematics, and all of that. We have more than 50 years working in this direction, and the interests of Inria are varied. So it's all computer science all across the board, and if I mean, if you do machine learning and AI, probably you had used some results on some software from Inria. In particular, scikit-learn, for example, has been, let's say, made inside Inria by one of our project teams. But it is not only about that, no. So actually, in India, there is a lot of people working in algorithms, security, quantum computing, modeling, simulation, optimization, any topic, no, because it's around, as I said, applied mathematics and computer science. So Inria is, let's say, distributed in different centers in France, 9 centers at the moment, and there is only one center abroad. That is this center, Inria, Chile, from where I am presenting to you today. As Cristina mentioned, we both, Nayat and myself, we work here for, I think, more than 3 years now. So Inria is, although Inria works in, let's say, computer science, in all topics related to computer science, as in many other, let's say, cases, in recent years, more and more attention has been paid to artificial intelligence in general. So this statistic is from probably 1 year ago, but of the 200 teams that are active inside Inria, in total, just to give you an idea, should be like 4,000 researchers. From all those teams, like 160 teams were working in one way or another in a topic related to AI. And in particular, and it's a big pride for us, INRIA was center part of the creation of the French strategy for AI for humanity. And INRIA is the coordinator for the academic part of this strategy, in conjunction, of course, with companies and the rest of the society. So this is to, let's say, highlight the interest of the center in this direction. But this is no surprise, because right now, in the last 10 years, AI is getting more and more important and getting more and more attraction. And that is why I think meetings like these are so important and so also, let's say, essential for the Ibero-American community and all of that. So this is a photo of Santiago de Chile. Actually, I don't know if you see my mouse, but you could see in the Inria Chile building in this photo, but it's not the tallest one, of course. And actually, this is a building. We occupy the floor in this building. And we have been here in Chile since 2012, for almost 10 years now. And the mission of the center here in Chile is to serve as a connection between academia, and it's actually the mission of INRI in general, to be an active connection between academia and, let's say, society, industry, and not only doing top level research, basic research, but also finding a way for landing this research into tangible society improvements. No? And I think that the best way to summarize this impact on society is that right now, if you are seeing me, is because Inria invented packet switching in the 70s, and every TCP/IP package uses packet switching as a way for ensure safe communication. So I think it's an important impact on society. So going back to the topic of the talk that I wanted to present to you is around the concern that, I mean, a shared concern in the center, but also in society around climate change, no? And and of course, let's say us as computer scientists have an important role on how to, let's say, be a part of a solution and not of a problem. No, so at certain point, it is pretty much self-evident that AI and computer science in general, but AI in particular, is an essential tool for mitigating climate change and for let's say, preventing climate change, and in many different ways. No? There are many applications around this. I will mention them briefly, but also, and more recently, in the last 3-4 years, there is a growing interest on the impact of our own impact on nature and climate change and, let's say, pollution in general. In particular, because with the growth of machine learning, the amount of energy that we need to have these systems working, and I have to say, well, I diverge, but we have a joint project involving Cristina, Marisa around these topics, by the way. We need to understand how to mitigate this. We are not going to talk about this, let's say, the bad side of AI and how to fix this. There are a lot of people working on this, by the way, and there are a lot of new results trying to address this issue. It is not only AI, by the way. I don't know if you know, but for example, social networks have a higher contribution to CO2 emissions than the whole airplane industry. No, and no one stops using TikTok. By the way, TikTok is the most polluting social network of all. There is like papers around this and all of that. So let's focus on this. Let's say on the left side of this diagram is how to use AI to mitigate and create strategies for handling or reducing the impact of climate change. No? As I was mentioning, we are actually here in Chile interested in the topics related to climate change. We have a big project that will be the focus of this presentation. It's called OcéanIA, of Ocean and Artificial Intelligence. But we have also been working in the optimal design of solar facilities, on modeling for optimizing tidal energy generation, autonomous sailboats for sampling the ocean, energy generation offshore, pollution tracking, tsunami modulation, all of that. Understanding nature, understanding, for example, forecasting climate and weather for smart agriculture. We have different topics around this. So the main focus of this presentation is this project that we started actually almost a year ago, in past July, that has to do with the application of artificial intelligence and modeling for understanding climate change and how to mitigate climate change. No? And the situation is that, and why we focus in the ocean, no? Is that first, this has been repeatedly said, but it's true. The ocean is at some point the last and big unknown. No, actually, we know more of planet Mars than we know about the ocean. No? And in part is because, well, there is a lot of interest in society to explore other planets. The ocean seems to be like a big, place full of water, but a lot of these phenomena that happen in the ocean are not well understood. The main role or the main aspect of this is that the ocean is the main actor when capturing carbon, capturing CO2, and therefore is the main active tool that the planet has to protect itself against climate change. No? And so we need to understand these processes because they are heavily intertwined, and then they are actively being manipulated by the effect of humans in the planet. No, just to give you an idea, and this is a small divergence, we are starting to work to understand the effects of the extraction of material from rivers that have on the ocean. And it seems that, yes, by changing the way our rivers are, in particular in Chile, it's changing the way the shore of the ocean is established, and then this is destroying a lot of ecosystems and so on. So in theory, it doesn't look like there is not a direct impact, but it does. No, so it's a we have a system that is in a very unstable equilibrium, and we need to understand how to preserve this equilibrium. No? So in this context, we came up and proposed Inria to have this Inria challenge. One of the ways of Inria of, let's say, organizing the research activities through this program that is called Inria Challenge, and OcéanIA is an Inria challenge. And the idea is to see what is the overlap between understanding climate change, the relation with the ocean, and how we can apply AI to solve these problems. And at a certain point of view, as a joke, no, in AI we have been relying on nature for a lot of inspiration, evolutionary algorithms, neural networks, a lot of things. And so it's time to return the favor and try to help nature back to stay, let's say, alive, essentially. So it's actually a very interesting goal, I think. So, but it's not only that. This is not an applied project in the sense that we are not just applying tools that we have to problems and that's it. The problem is that understanding this phenomena, the answering these questions related to ocean and climate change, from one part, it's true that we can come, let's say, with our recent super tools and propose the experts of the field to address problems that they originally did not understood or did not solve because they are, let's say, biologists, oceanographers and all of that. So it's good that we establish, and the OcéanIA is a way of, or an attempt to do this, establish a common ground where multidisciplinary teams work together to solve these kind of problems. But then in return, actually the problems that they have are really challenging for the current state of the art of AI, ML, and modeling, no? Because it requires us to develop better ways for handling small data, for example, handling graph-based information, let's say structured information, applying causality, explainability, because it's not only needed that we have a model for doing some classification, they need knowledge about this model. They need to understand why we are classifying these, for example, these organisms as different things. So it is the goal of the project is not only to create fancy new models, but also create better research tools that experts in the field and also decision makers can use to decide what to do and all of that. So sorry, this is a big aspect of this. So as I was saying, the project is heavily multidisciplinary. It's led from Inria, Chile, but involves different teams from France, from within Inria, Ange, Tao, and Biocore. Ange works in modeling, more theoretical aspects of modeling, PDEs, and all of that. Tao is a team focused on AI, machine learning, and let's say in the new challenges of machine learning. And Biocore also applies modeling and ML tools for understanding natural processes and all of that. And we also work with the GOSI Federation of CNRS, the Université de Nantes, and then here in Chile with the Universidad de Chile, the CMM, that is the Center for Mathematical Modeling, and the Catholic University of Chile. And it's important because we also have work in cooperation with two organizations that are essential for the success of the project. One is Tara Oceans, and the other is the Copernicus. This is the team. As you can guess, there's a lot of people working together. By the way, we have this website that you can go and read. And why we are so interested on Tara, no? And what they have to offer is that Tara is a French foundation that operates a sailing vessel that moves around, let's say, carries out different missions to sample marine ecosystems and all of that. So they have been doing this for many years. They have, let's say, a consistent methodology that for us computer scientists, this is very important. And they have created a lot of data by carrying out these missions. For example, there is a very interesting mission that you can see here in red. They stayed, if I remember correctly, like a couple of years or so in the Arctic. Let's say the vessel froze in the Arctic and drifted to sample how the ice moves and the population, all of this. So they have been doing all of this for many years. So we have an strategic relationship. They are part of the project of OcéanIA, and this is really important. And why they are so important is because they sail around the planet, taking these samples at different depths, and they sample. Then they can sift and separate different kinds of organisms. For me as a computer scientist, this is like magical. They can separate viruses from bacteria using a mechanical thing, but well, they do this and do two things. First, they sample the DNA and they have a big data set of geolocated DNA samples, and then they also take images of the organisms that they are seeing at different depths. So it is a very nice way of having a bunch of data that we can start to, let's say, generate hypotheses about. No? So, and this is the more or less the organization. And as I was mentioning, we are, let's say, Inria is a computer science institute. So this is a computer science project with applications in the uh, biosphere, ecosystems, and climate change domain. So we have a set of questions that have to do with um, computer science, and we relate them with some questions that we have in the application domain. And one of them is the small data context, no? And this is, by the way, shared by most of real life applications in the industry, for example, no? When every time you talk to an industry, they want to apply machine learning, and then they even have an idea that of something that is doable, no? But then when you go and talk to them, actually they don't have a lot of data. And I am just going to contradict myself from 2 slides ago. 2 slides ago, I said, okay, we have Tara. Tara gathers a lot of information, all of that. Yes, that's true. But it still is not the, let's say, the volume of information that we need for classical current state of, sorry, current state of the art ML. No? In particular, because, for example, this is actually a plot I just did for the presentation of the different. This is the mission of Tara, a recent mission in this year from Loran to Punta Arenas in the south. And Tara stopped in different places to take samples. And actually, if you see, if you're going to do machine learning, you don't have so many samples places to be able to have a mesh for doing, let's say, valid experimentation. Actually, this is a small data and mixed with big data problem. You have in every point you can have a lot of information, but you have very few points. So actually, you don't have a big sampling of the space. That's why these problems are so interesting, because they are not a single tool, one shot, let's say, approach. No, you need to get involved and to understand these kind of situations. So it's like having an Excel spreadsheet that has a lot of columns but very few rows. So how you manage to uh, to be able to elicit valuable conclusions out of this, no? So we, for example, are applying a lot of zero-shot learning, transfer learning, all of that to be able to overcome these difficulties. Then, by the way, you have the problem that even though they make their best to have a consistent experimentation, hardware changes, no? Things break. So you never, as this Greek philosopher had said, you never take a bath twice in the same river, no? So still you need to be able to overcome differences and changes in the measurements, and to be able to extrapolate from things you have seen in one part of the ocean to another and all of that. So there is a lot of zero-shot learning, few-shot learning, etc., that takes place on this. And then you have the other situation that a lot of these problems are expressed as graphs or networks, as they call them in the, let's say, in the more biological area, no? So there is a need again in a mixed small big data context is where you need to do this pattern matching, discover general graphs that describe ecosystems, so you can, for example, understand uh, where co-occurrence leads to causality and all of that. So actually, there is a lot of work being carried out inside the project on how to extrapolate these graph-based these structures from one ecosystem to another and all of that. And as I mentioned, there is a need for active, featured, and multitask learning heavily. No? In particular, in the area, for example, of image recognition. Image recognition in this context is, I think, a very good opportunity for us to address, to, let's say, to have an important contribution, because if you think bioinformaticians have been working for many years around DNA and handling DNA information, DNA-based information, proteins, and all of this, no? But in this particular domain of understanding the image aspects of this is really important. For example, because it's way simpler to take photos than to sample DNA. So if we can make a establish a relationship between DNA samples and physical aspect of organisms, is really important, because you can start to discover and to relate DNA and all of that. Because one of the challenges that they have when they do this sampling is that, okay, they take a sample of all the bacteria that they found in the water sample, and then they send this to sequence the DNA. So it's like more or less, and I hope there is no biologist in the room. So, but this is more or less like sampling your soup, no? In the sense that you will have a little bit of onion DNA, a little bit of chicken DNA or tofu DNA, and noodles DNA, and then you need to put the pieces together and say, okay, this is all of these are bacteria, and these are the species. These are the different other kinds of bacteria, or if in the example of the soup, chicken and noodles and all of that. So using the two sources of information is a way of doing multimodal learning. Is also a very challenging problem. And then this is connected to anomaly detection, causality, and explainability, because one another complex problem is, okay, you have a lot of photos of these organisms. What is the next step? No, it's very expensive to annotate this data set, because this is not horse, airplane, and dogs as CIFAR 10 or CIFAR 100. These are very special organisms that you need trained biologists to recognize them, and actually probably they would not agree on many things and all of that. So here in the previous slide, I mentioned that active learning would be like an important and is an important tool, but also, for example, anomaly detection is important, because we need to show what if this individual is known or unknown, and not only that, we need to the biologists need to know why this is a different individual. Oh, look, this one here has 10 legs instead of 8. So probably this is a different kind of, I don't know, insect or mollusk or whatever it is. No, so it is not only a problem of, let's say, again, applying the current state of the art, is that we need new methods for addressing this thing, and this is the leitmotif of the work we have been doing, and we are actively working on this. And then the other area that I mentioned is that we are actively working in applying causal inference and explainable AI, because I already mentioned this, but one of our main goals is to be able not only to provide models, but also explain why they work like that. And there is a bunch of work being done here. As you know, this is also one of the hot topics in AI, because to overcome all the ethical issues, all the user, let's say, proper usage, AI for good, and all of that, one of the ways of doing this is either by, let's say, making the current state of the art of ML and AI in general to a way that humans can consume it. And this is probably one way of doing that is through causality. No, establishing causal rules allow us to, let's say, understand the phenomena, and by providing explainability, let's say, explainable support for the decisions of a given model. No, as you know, neural networks are very hard to understand, if not impossible to understand, because there are a bunch of weights and all of that. So even though there is a lot of work to try to, let's say, open the black box of neural network, there are needs for doing this. For example, by creating shadow models that can be trained on the same problem, not used for prediction, but be used for explanation and all of that. And then another important component is that it's not just that we want to explain things, it's that if you want to act, you need to know why you act and where to act. You need to act on the causes of the problem, not on the consequences of the problem. So this is really important. And then one important aspect is that we need to be able to merge two areas of, let's say, modeling and uh, of of reality that have been growing and developing at a certain point in parallel. No, you have model-based approaches where you have, for example, partial differential equations that describe a certain physical problem. This is not, I mean, this topic is not new. You have finite elements and all of that to try to solve the problem. So we can argue that any model is an approximation. So even if you write the turbulence equations for something, the shallow water equations, for example, that this is a well-known problem, still this is a model of reality, is not reality. And then you have, on the other hand, machine learning that is database, in the sense that you sample something, for example, in this case, a phenomena, and if you sample it enough, you are able to model it. And actually, none of the two are able to solve the problem completely. I always say that at this point, it's like hugging this image of the blind philosophers hugging an elephant. No, machine learning and database approaches hug one part of the elephant, and model-based approaches hug another. No, it's a way actually of combining human symbolic-based knowledge with database automatically elicited knowledge from data. No, and actually there is let's say, a common ground, a set of trade-offs. No, because sometimes if you don't believe your model, you say your PDE model too much, you can gather more data and improve it. Or if you have a lot of data, you can still make that the neural network performs as the model, so it's more explainable, for example. So it's a very interesting area that we are actively working on this. In particular, something called physics-informed neural networks, that is a relatively recent buzzword that is becoming like dominating this area of what in mathematical modeling they used to call data assimilation. Is that you have a model, how I tune my model to make it look like the data I am seeing. No, and physics-informed neural networks are able to merge this. You train neural networks in a way that they conform to the data we have, but also conform with the model what we have. So as you can, I am summarizing this really fast, but it is a very interesting approach. Not only but the fact that you are able to fuse two sources of information, but because also neural networks are way faster to use at inference time than the modeling, the computational tools that we have for model PDEs. So even if we have a perfect PDE and it conforms to data perfectly, and even if we simulate this data for the neural network, it will still make sense to train a neural network, because using the neural network as, let's say, just a modeling tool is way faster than using let's say, more classical computational approach. So it is really interesting, and we are using this for modeling ocean fluids and all of that, because one of the challenges, by the way, of the project is that the ocean is not an static place. Everything is moving, so we need to understand how this works. And then probably in conjunction of all of this, we need to try to focus on how to link ecosystems and functions. No? You have ecosystems that capture a lot of carbon, for example, the Amazon forest, no? And you have other ecosystems that don't. No? So we need to understand what make an ecosystem have certain functions, and what elements of this ecosystem make them to have this function, and what elements should be primarily protected so this function is preserved. No? So, and then we need to see how these functions are impacted by the changes of climate change, because again, this is like a negative cycle that we're living in. No? So you have ecosystems that protect the planet from climate change. Climate change is, let's say, acting and actually destroying these ecosystems. So it's like our shield is getting thinner and thinner, because the climate change is affecting it itself. So and this is a lot of applications for, or a big space for applications for causal inference, for example, graph-based processing, or understanding graphs and all of that. And because a lot of these elements are not well understood. No? And then another interesting aspect of the project that we have been making recent progress on is how to link remote sensors to local measurements. It's like how we can go for global to local. And for example, imagine that it would be possible to rely purely on satellite images to identify what ecosystems are on the ocean. And if we know from the previous questions which ecosystems have a given function, we would be able to create a policy where we protect the ocean, the key areas of the ocean, depending on what we see. Just to give you an idea, we have new satellite photos publicly available every week. So it would be possible to create, for example, and this is like a fantasy, like let's say, online nature reserve, where depending on the ecosystem we see, we forbid sailing vessels or human activity in general to act in certain parts of the ocean and so on. So we have been working on this, and actually it seems that it's possible to do this, at least for some ecosystems. So because using different processing on the satellite images, we are able to determine which individuals we are seeing in the water with certain accuracy. So if we picture this problem in a diagram like this, where we have satellites in one end and identify individuals in one point, either though from the samples we can train, for example, it's not hard to train a neural network to classify different plankton images. It is not trivial, but it is doable using supervised learning. And then there are relatively a lot of works doing the work from A to C. So from satellite images, determining some water properties like temperature, the amount of chlorophyll in the water, etc. What we want to do is let's do from A to D, is like to identify plankton populations, or ideally even go from A to I and identify not the let's say the population. When I say population, is ecosystem. Actually, it's like, okay, this is, as we like to say, this is the Amazon forest, no? Or this is the Atlantic forest of Rio de Janeiro. No, and then go in more detail. Okay, this is an ecosystem that has these particular classes of individuals and all of that. So this is a far more, let's say, challenging question. We are currently focusing more in the A to D situation, but we are working in the the whole pipeline around this. And also we have some, let's say, results in the software direction, as I mentioned at the beginning, and this is a way of, let's say, closing the loop. We have some work in the making these results and the work we do available to the community. So we have been developed in Inria, Chile, let's say, a bioinformatics package for handling large genomic data sets and processing automatically in the cloud. So for practitioners, it's transparent to use and all of that, and speed up the, let's say, less scientists and bioinformaticians focus on the problem and not on the computational aspects. And again, I wanted to close the presentation of the work we are doing here in a way of, let's say, the convergence of different theoretical aspects with the different applied aspects, and how they different applications share different questions that imply the heavily multidisciplinary work that is being done. So if you want to read more around this, feel free. We have first the website of the project that we try to keep updated with activities and all of that. And then we wrote a white book. It's a brief booklet or book, whatever, where we describe, and we plan to update every year with the activities of the project, and we have been doing the goals and all of that. And this is very important for us because we want this to be the start of a conversation, not just us working on some particular. So everyone is invited to take part of this. And I think, by the way, that is a topic that anyone should feel interested, regardless of what we do, because has an important impact in the long term, future of humanity, and not even long term, in the short term future of humanity, society, the planet, and all of that. No, so I have briefly commented you the work we have been doing and mentioning some of the problems that we have. I wanted you to see and use this as a, let's say, like to pick your interest on this topic, and hopefully to draw attention either to work with us or with anyone on this topic, because I think that for AI practitioners and for computer scientists in general, but for AI people, is really interesting, and because not only is a chance for us to have a direct positive impact, but also a challenging problem that implies do additional science and try to solve problems that and develop new methods that we don't have at hand. No, and probably you are questioning yourself, okay, what can I do? Well, I am sorry, I'm going to do some advertisement here, no? But we have two workshops. First, one workshop, sorry, that is to be hosted in ICAI, the International Joint Conference on Artificial Intelligence, a conference that has a long tradition on AI. Is going to take place in Vienna in the next summer of the Northern Hemisphere, and we have a workshop to gather works related to AI, ocean, and climate change. We already organized this 1 year ago in ICLR, and in this time we are organizing it in ICAI. And also in order to facilitate bringing new people into work in this domain, also in ICAI, we are hosting a challenge that is more focused on a particular application of this. No, in particular, we are going to, let's say, organize this challenge around the problem that I just described to you on how to determine ocean ecosystems from space, no? Combining genomic information, microscopic, and satellite imagery. So if you want to check this out, we have all the information in the OcéanIA website and the links to the challenges and all of this, and the challenge and the workshop, sorry. And feel free to reach out if you want to get involved. Of course, it's an open opportunity. And the good thing of of let's say of the challenge is that we will be, let's say, making available in a more or less easy to use form, making these data sets available and also providing some tutorials to people that want to do some interesting stuff. It's not a competition, it's a challenge in the sense that we want to tease people brains to come up with interesting solutions, no? Not just, improve the F1 score of something in a given percent. We want to evaluate creative ideas, not only because of the score and all of that. So of course, we have a scientific committee and all of that, and I invite you to participate. So thank you very much. I am going to stop here to receive some of your questions. And by the way, now that I see, we are hiring people that want to join Inria Chile to work on this project. So if you are interested, do not hesitate to reach out. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I don't know if you can hear me.
I
I'm
can.
on? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, Luis, for the wonderful, presentation. Wow, I got, I'm going to apply to work with you. It's kind of very exciting. It's like many different, and the research challenges are awesome. I really like it. Before opening for questions, and I think that Marisa is writing it down. I would like to ask you three questions, short ones. Is the first one is related with the technical approach. It's like, have you thought about, in addition of using artificial intelligence, also use collective intelligence? This is the first one because I haven't pinpoint in your presentation. The second one it's like, wow, it's a huge project. Which countries are involved? And so I know that you have a big group, but I think this is such an important issue, climate change, that I'm wondering if you know about here that is at MIT, there is like a big group in collective intelligence for climate change. So this is the second one, and I'm sorry that that I didn't bring this guy here to listen to your presentation. I'm going to give him the YouTube link, and this third question is like, in what stage are you guys in the research, like modeling, prototyping, deploying, getting results? So I got like curious to understand that.
Okay, so, well, thank you. The three questions are really interesting. The first question was, have we thought of using collective intelligence? Thought, yes. Done something about it? No.
Okay.
But no, but it's more than that. We have not actively started on this, but the way of, let's say, guiding, there is a big problem of having labeled data, no? So you can either go in the direction of, let's say, self-supervision, unsupervised learning, clustering, and all that path, no? Anomaly detection, etc. Another way is, okay, let's try to at least reduce the burden of labeling data, in the sense, instead of labeling 1 million data points, 1 million images, let's pick 1,000 really relevant images for scientists to label, no? Because the main challenge of how to solve this problem is that you need people that know a little bit of this, no? Because you need to identify, this is a diatomea. I didn't knew what diatomea was. By the way, they are beautiful, no? It's a kind of bacteria and all of that, no? You need to know some of this knowledge. So one way is using active learning instead of just putting you to click like automata. Is okay, I am going to just reduce this load, and then of course it would be really interesting. I don't know exactly how to organize this, but probably using some a lot of HCI and um, cool tools, we could try to, I don't know, I am just making this up. Like, for example, showing like some contracts. This is an image we know. This is similar to this other image. This is something that humans can do. You don't need to be a biologist. So we could try to show two images to people and say this is the same, no, something like that. This could be
Uh-huh.
really interesting. And I am getting in. I am just making this up as we speak, no. So probably there is even better things to do. So actually, no, I didn't knew of this group of people. So it would be awesome to get in contact because uh, there is nothing better than human annotated or knowledge, no, when you have to do this, no. So if there is a source for this, is we should take advantage and then also try to, let's say, use all machine learning is at a certain point of view brute force, but even more brute force is self-supervision and all of that that relies less on annotated information, no? So it would be, if you can put us in contact, it would be awesome, no? And
Okay.
then the third question is the status. No? So we started a year ago officially. Unofficially, we started even before. We are actively working in causality for ecosystems. We are actively working in the area of plankton image understanding using, let's say, self-supervision and with minimal supervision. We are working a lot on pins, on physics-informed neural networks. And then on, as a project in general, there is also a lot of work being carried out by this other team, BioCore, in applying PDEs to model natural processes and like the growth of algae, and all of this. No? And she's also working on this. And then this is a very broad network. So different people are collaborating each other and all of that. By the way, on the website, we have the publications that have been produced already by the project on this. No, still it's really early because, well, what can I say? I don't want
One
to start
year.
complaining,
Yeah.
but no, but it's also hard to find people to get involved in the project, scientists and all of that. Now in AI, the competition for this is really strong. But at least we are, let's say, moving ahead. No, we plan, for example, by organizing this challenge and all of this, try to also to focus and to narrow down, because the things that the project uh, is too broad. No? It's also a 5-year project, so should have time to develop. But for example, another thing is that we are open. You ask us if we knew which countries. Right now, we have people from France and people from Chile, no? But of course, we're interested in collaborating. For example, people from our friends and in Brazil, no? It's a very good place. People from Spain also work, no? And again, it's important because we need also to have a multidisciplinary team, no? In the sense that some of the results for us could be, bad, to summarize it, no? But for a biologist, knowing that 60% of the cases they are able to identify something, maybe it's awesome, no? Because right now they can't, no? So it's very important to also that we read their papers, no? There are a lot of, by the way, I highly recommend to read the science, the journal, science
Mm-hmm.
edition, a science number, a special edition dedicated to Tara, that they gather a lot of papers that were produced from Tara results, and is reading them as a computer scientist or a machine learning person is really interesting, because they like leave the connectors for us to come and do some additional work. No? And for me, the best example is I remember reading one of these papers that they said we did. This is a regression problem. We use scikit-learn, linear regression, default parameters. So it's awesome, no? Okay,
I
I
understand.
know they left this in the position that I can say, okay, linear regression is not the thing to do, let's let's move it some steps.
Change.
I am not saying, by the way, it's the same for us that we say, oh, we discovered this new species. No, this is a very multidisciplinary, but you see that they are interested in this because they have realized that there is also very good timing for this.
Thank you.
We have one question from audience.
My pleasure.
What are the possibilities to work together? From Gabriel.
Well, thank you, Gabriel. I think that the possibilities are depending on what you want to do, no? What part of a project attracts you the most, no? This is one of the reasons they decided to organize this challenge in ISCAI, no? It's a way, okay, if you want to work in this, it's very hard. By the way, a big part of the project so far has been just identifying whom to talk to, where is the data, and all of that, because data is scattered, supposed to be public, but public in somebody's hard drive, so it's not public. It's public but not available. All of the things that we know from real life, let's say applied projects in industry, happens also here, no? So there is a lot of work being done in preparation to start to work, no? This Python library I mentioned that allows you to get DNA sequences geolocated and all of that was part of this, no? So one trivial proposal from my part would be try to take part on the challenge, no? If the topic of the challenge is not so interesting, feel free to reach out to us. We can try to find common problems and work together. Again, this is not a closed door project. It's meant to be carried out in the open, allowing with a lot of collaboration. So feel free to reach out. Maybe another good starting point is to read the white book, so you know more or less what's on our mind. It doesn't mean that maybe next year we change something, no, because we don't have to live by the things we wrote when we didn't know anything of the problem. So you need to adapt. But it's a good starting point to read this white book, and that's why we wrote it, actually, to simplify. Instead of describing a lot of details, I can tell you, okay, read this. It has a lot of references to other work of people and all of that. So it's I think a good another starting point.
Just let me just jump. I forgot to ask. You said that you are using the Tara data sets, right?
Mm-hmm.
So do you have any um, um, cooperation, any agreement for using their data? And I understand that, okay, they have like a lot of data, spatial data, like data from many places. But since when? So I'm thinking about the time access, like to try to see some modification in the data.
Well, the Tara data by principle is all public. No? This is what I was saying before. No, everything is public. No? Okay, but it can be public subject to some constraints. For example, when they carry out a mission, no, imagine you sample something. The same thing, by the way, happened, for example, with astronomers. No, the people involved in the mission had something that they call an embargo on data. So during some time, only them can publish stuff from this data. But we are part of the mission. No?
Ah, the catch,
No,
catch.
and Tara is part of OcéanIA as a project. No? So we have a memorandum of understanding. So even if we agree, for example, of okay, if biologists need to work on something because and they want to, let's say, preserve their because their publication loop is slower, no, and we can send something to a conference and it's available in 3 months, no. Okay, we can say, okay, we can work on the data, not publish the results, but we can see the data, no? And then there is like 10 years of data of Tara in the past that you can play already with a lot of data. We have a data set of, I don't know, like 30 million plankton images, no?
Wow.
So most of them are unlabeled. By the way, most of them are garbage, literally, no, like little green things that no. So just filtering this is an interesting computer vision problem, no? Just to say something. So there is data available. Data is not the only source. No, the main difficulty I think is that if you want to start from the bottom, raw data is available. But if you want to say, okay, I want to understand the role of whales in ecosystem, so I am going to use the data set of this paper. So this guy published a zip file with this data, and then the website is, and this is where we have been trying to consolidate a lot of this, because you have like different levels of abstraction in this data set. No? And if you try to reconstruct this, is really expensive in time and effort. And that's why, for example, working with directly with biologists, they already have this, let's say, pre-packaged. But I have to say, Tara is a good example of the governance of this, even though it is not like one place. You have images in one part, you have DNA samples in another, because they have these big repositories of biological sequences that gather everything. So you have to filter by Tara. So it has some, as everything requires some knowledge of the tool, but data is there. No?
Okay, thank you.
It's not trivial, but it's easy.
It's not
Luis.
easy.
Well,
Yeah. Luis, we've seen projects like this, how much AI could help us to solve the challenges in climate change. But a lot has been discussed about the other sides, as you mentioned. The AI impacts on dioxide, carbon emissions. And how do you see this balance and the project think in these projects also think in this balance, the negative and the positive impact of AI?
Well, there are let's say on the environmental impact. So there are two things. One thing is let's say the computational footprint, and something that is related but is not the same is environmental impact. No? So you can do stuff to go make zero your environmental impact. It's like using cloud computing facilities that use renewable energy, and this is doable. It's just pay more money, no, essentially, no, because I'm not going to use names, but there are some cloud computing providers that ensure you that their cloud facilities use renewable energy, no, and of course this is not let's say this is like a simple band-aid on top of this, no. Then using this is also really expensive, no. So there is a work that we need to do on how to make our whole machine learning pipeline more efficient and less, let's say, less brute force. No? And again, for that, my opinion, we need more AI. No? It's like the solution for that is more because more AI, because when you see where we spend, so we have two scenarios. We have the scenario of training and let's say learning in general. I use training because I am biased by machine learning. When you optimize whatever model you want to have of reality or the phenomenon you want to model, and then the inference where you use this. No, so these are very different scenarios, because in general the creation of the model is something that you do once, no, and it can be really expensive. But if you are going to do it once and reuse it a lot, it's okay, no. But then the use itself can also, if you have a model that, for example, requires a very big GPU just to do inference, like transformers, for example, this is a big problem, no. But the good thing is that as it is also a computational viability problem, a lot of companies are working just for the money aspect of this, on how to make, for example, transformers available so you can use them in production for labeling stuff. No? They have the inference of transformers has, if I remember correctly, a quadratic complexity. There are people trying to make it linear, so it would automatically help this other aspect. But then the other thing is that as in every aspect, a lot of people tend to join the bandwagon and say, okay, I'm going to put here a very fancy, expensive model that has a lot of, bigger the better, etc. And there are a lot of cases, like the cases we have, that we have less expensive model that can work, no? And let's say that, and then at the inference time are less heavy in computational impact. Again, so solving the inference aspect, I see it as more computational. Not saying that it is not, it's simpler. We need to revisit how we do it, but then in the optimization part, the way we need to optimize the optimization. So hey, I have been working in evolutionary algorithms, so this is my thing. But again, I am not saying I am not oversimplifying it. The thing is that we need to do it with less brute force. For example, a lot of people just start testing, and if anyone that had trained a neural network has the temptation of saying, okay, learning rate 0.1, wrong, no, 0.2, no, okay, no, don't do that. No? Use something smarter. Right now we have tools that can guide you through this to reduce the cost, and we have a project that, well, you two are also taking part to try to formalize this, no? To try to say, okay, how, for example, put as an objective the cost and the impact of training a given model, no? And there is, as everything in life, it's a trade-off, no? You can have a less expensive model that runs with a lower accuracy, but good enough to solve the problem. And understanding this is also important, no? Again, there is a trend in because people need to publish on improving F1 score of something, of a given problem. And in many cases, as this is very human. It's like add more, no? It's put more, no? Put a bigger engine, and it becomes very, hard to compete. For another reason, it's because this leaves a lot of people out, no? If the competition is going to be who has the bigger computing facility, then okay, the rest of us can go to do something else, because very few people have a supercomputer to do extensive hyperparameter search. So it's also, I think, has to do with access to technology and all of that. But sorry, I diverge.
No. Thank you. Okay, we
Well,
have no question in the audience, from the audience.
Well,
is
thank you
there?
very much.
Is there?
Yeah.
Thank you, Luis Martí. It was a wonderful presentation again. Okay, I hope to see you soon, at least at the conference. Okay, and let me talk about our next presenter. So our third speaker is going to be Ricardo Beziats. He is going to talk about ethics in AI. So it's a challenging task, and we should talk about that. So don't miss it. It's going to be April 20th at 2 p.m. at your same channel. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.